The living room is quiet. A TV series is playing on the TV. Amira is lying on the sofa, covered with a blanket. She watches without looking away. Jinho returning. He looks very tired. His face is gray from the strain. He silently takes off his coat and puts his shoes on the shelf. He's been the big boss all day, and now he just wants to be the husband of the house. He walks into the living room. He approaches the sofa and kisses Amira on the forehead. His kiss is warm, familiar. "Is it tough today?" she asks, turning off the sound. He nods. "Yes." Tired. She sees that he's somewhere far away. His gaze is empty, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. He sits down next to her, staring into space. Amira puts her hand on his back. Just like that, he decides to go change. He gets up from the couch. His head is filled with tasks, numbers, and other people's voices. And suddenly another face pops into his thoughts. A laughing young one. He dismisses the image, but it's too late. Turning to his wife, he looks at her. For a second, his tired brain replaces one image with another. His tongue seems to have a life of its own. "How is your day, Moran?" he says in a casual tone. The word hangs in the air. Jinho freezes. He hears what he said. It's like falling into an icy pit. He sees Amira slowly look away from the screen and stare at him, uncomprehending. "Moran?" she asks again. Her voice is quiet, but the silence in the room is now deafening. "Who is it?" Panic hits my temples. I need to say something quickly. Explain. "My new lawyer," he almost breathes. "The last name. I don't remember it now. Moran. I'm very tired. My head is spinning." He turns away, pretending to adjust his sleeve. He can't look her in the eyes. "All day long I talked about nothing but her contracts. I completely forgot myself," he adds, trying to sound natural. Amira is silent. She doesn't move, only looks at him. Her gaze seems to scan every feature of his face, searching for a crack. "I've never heard of such a thing," she finally says evenly. "I just hired you. Just a couple of months," he says, waving his hand as if it's nothing. He turns to leave, eager to get out of the room. "I'll go change." He goes into the hallway, leaving her alone. Her heart is pounding as if it wants to break out. Amira remains on the couch. She no longer watches the show. She stares into space. She repeats the name in her ear. Moran, a foreign, harsh name. The explanation seems logical. Tired work. Anything is possible. But deep inside, a small lock clicked. It clicked and opened a door, through which a cold breeze of doubt now blows. She doesn't yet know where it will lead her, but she senses that something is wrong. She pulls the blanket over her shoulders. The first, almost invisible crack has appeared in the house that was once a fortress. He fell asleep almost immediately, but his sleep was restless. Jinho tossed and turned, muttering something. Amira lay awake next to him. She stared at the ceiling and listened. At first, he talked about work. Then his voice changed. It became quieter, softer. He turned to her and said clearly, almost in a whisper, "Moran, do not leave." Amira froze. Everything inside her sank. It wasn't an accident. People don't lie in their dreams. There, deep down, where true thoughts hide, lived that name. And with it lived tenderness and guilt. She heard it. She slowly sat up in bed. She looked at her sleeping husband, and everything in her head fell into place, as if a puzzle had come together. A casual slip of the tongue at dinner, a lie about a lawyer too quickly, and now this dream. That was enough. "It's all wrong," she thought coldly and clearly. "He's lying to me." The pain and tears would come later. Now she was overcome by another feeling, a keen desire to know the truth, the whole truth. She couldn't just lie there and wonder. She got out of bed silently. She went to his nightstand. His phone was there, a black, silent witness. Amira took it and went into the living room. She sat down in his chair. The phone felt heavy in her hand. She pressed the button. The screen asked for a password, 4 digits. The investigation has begun. First attempt, their wedding date. Incorrect. Second, his birth date. Error again. Third, a simple code. Code 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. The phone refused. Amira thought, what could he possibly use? And then it dawned on her. There was a date he'd once called the day of his personal happiness. It was long ago, at the very beginning. He'd said he'd remember it forever. She'd never checked to see if that was true. With a slight tremor in her fingers, she entered the 4 numbers. The screen flashed and unlocked. She succeeded. My heart started pounding. There was a picture of them together on the screen, but it didn't mean anything to me right now. Amira didn't mean anything. Her finger hovered over the contacts icon. Right now, That very name could be on this list, or it could not be. But she couldn't stop. She clicked. The contact list opened. The names were listed alphabetically. Amira scrolled through them quickly, barely glancing. Her eyes caught the familiar names of his colleagues, partners, and driver. Everything as usual. And suddenly, she stopped. Her finger froze on the screen. Between Marina, accounting, and Nikolai, logistics, there was a single name. No last name, no company name, just Moran. And next to it, not a working phone icon, but a heart. A small yellow smiley face with a heart. That's it. That was the answer. The one she'd been dreading and waiting for at the same time. All his lies about the lawyer crumbled to dust. Lawyers don't get hearts, and they don't keep them in personal contacts under just a name. Amira stared at those 6 letters. Her head was empty, only emptiness and a buzz. She sat in his chair, in their home, holding in her hand the proof that her world had ended. Then the emptiness was replaced by a strange, chilling clarity. He needed to be sure, 100% sure. He needed to hear the voice. He needed to know how that voice spoke to him. Her hand was shaking. The phone felt slippery in her fingers. She tapped the name. A number and a call button appeared on the screen. She imagined what would happen if he woke up now. If he found her here, phone in hand. But it didn't matter anymore. The fear had vanished. All that remained was a burning desire to get to the bottom of this. She took a deep breath, more than her lungs could hold, and pressed the green tube. The phone rang long times. 1, 2. Every beat of her pulse echoed in her temples. She almost hung up after the 3rd ring, but she couldn't. There was a click on the other end of the line, just before the 4th ring. "Hello?" came a voice. A woman's. Sleepy. A little hoarse from sleep, but young, very young. There was not a drop of wariness in it, only lazy surprise. Amira couldn't utter a word. Her throat tightened. "Hello?" The girl on the other end, Moran, seemed about to hang up. And then Amira pushed out a breath of air, just to make a sound, but it came out like a whisper. The silence on the line stretched for a second. Then the voice changed. A familiar, intimate warmth entered it, the same one that now cut Amira like a knife. "Oh, my love, is that you?" Moran said, and I could hear her smile. "What's wrong? Why aren't you sleeping at this hour? Are you missing me?" The words "darling" and "miss you" hung in the quiet living room, filling it with poison. Amira jerked her hand away, as if the phone had become a red-hot iron. Her finger slammed onto the red button, ending the call. There was complete silence. Even the clock in this hallway stopped ticking. She sat, clutching the black rectangle in her palm, and that sleepy, gentle voice rang in her ears. "Darling!" Everything. Now she knew everything. This wasn't a client. This wasn't a lawyer. This was the one he'd called Darling, while his wife lay in the next room. She slowly lowered the phone onto the seat of the chair. Then she looked up at the dark window, where strange lights glowed. She saw her pale face in the reflection. And at that moment, something inside her broke. That icy clarity was gone, and something dark and heavy surged in its place. Something that made her suddenly feel dizzy, and her vision darkened. The phone fell from her hand and landed on the soft seat of the chair. Amira didn't even look at it. She sat there, staring at a single spot on the wall. That voice still rang in her ears. The words "darling" and "miss you" pounded in her temples like a hammer. She couldn't move. She couldn't even cry. Everything inside her felt numb. Then the numbness began to recede. It was replaced by a wave. Sharp, hot, unbearable. First, my throat tightened. Then a burning sensation came to my eyes. Amira tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't obey her. They buckled, and she slid slowly, as if in slow motion, from the chair to the floor. Her knees hit the parquet floor, but she felt no pain. And then the tears began to flow. Not quiet, but muffled, stifled sobs. She didn't scream, didn't call out. She simply sat on the living room floor, in the dark, her face buried in her knees, shaking. Her shoulders twitched, her breath caught. She cried from shame that she'd believed his lies, from the pain that someone else had taken her place, from fear of what would happen next. Everything she'd considered her life had crumbled in one evening. Tears streamed down her face, falling onto the dark parquet floor. She didn't try to stop them. It was necessary. How to get to the surface after being held underwater? She didn't know how long she sat like that. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour. But gradually, the sobs became quieter. Then they turned into intermittent whimpers. Then they stopped, too. She raised her head. Her face was wet, her eyes puffy. She slowly wiped her cheeks with the hem of her pajama top. And at that moment, something inside her clicked. as if one door had closed and another had opened. The pain hadn't gone away. It was there, huge and heavy, but now something else had joined it. Clarity, cold as ice. The tears are over. It's time for action. She was no longer just a betrayed wife. The thoughts in her head fell into a clear line. He lied to her face. He was living a double life, and he thought she knew nothing, that she would simply believe the fairy tale about the lawyer. No, she thought firmly, and the word rang loudly in her head. This won't happen. She wasn't going to throw a tantrum. She wasn't going to scream and throw him out. That would be too easy for him. He'd lie again, make something up, and then just continue his game. She decided to expose him, to force him to admit everything himself, to look him in the eye when he realized his lie had been exposed, and then decide what to do next. Amira braced herself on the chair and rose from the floor. Her legs trembled, but they held her up. She walked over to his chair and picked up the phone. The screen was dark. She placed it back on the nightstand, in exactly the same place. Everything should look normal. Then she quietly returned to the bedroom. Jinho was still deeply asleep. She lay down on her side of the bed, facing the wall. Her breathing was even, her body still. From the outside, it looked like she was asleep. But inside, her mind was racing. She was devising a plan. The first step, in the morning, she would pretend to have an urgent question and ask for his lawyer's number. That same Moran, and look him in the eye when he started lying again. She closed her eyes. Pain pressed against her chest, but she pushed it aside. Now she had to think, act. The determination inside her froze into a hard, cold lump. The game had begun, and this time, she dictated the rules. The kitchen smells of coffee in the morning. Amira stands at the stove. She's calm. Her face has a normal expression. Her hands don't shake as she pours juice into a glass. Jinho enters the kitchen. He's already dressed in an expensive suit. He looks fresher than yesterday. The boss mask is back in place. "Good morning," he says. He comes over and kisses her on the cheek. She doesn't pull away. "Morning. Breakfast is ready," she answers in a casual tone. She places an omelet on a plate. They sit down at the table. They eat in silence. Everything is as usual. Only Amira tastes like cardboard. She forces herself to chew and swallow. She looks up and watches him as he reads the news on his phone. He doesn't even suspect. She plays her role perfectly. The calm wife, knows nothing, suspects nothing. She puts down her fork, picks up her glass of juice, takes a small sip. "Jinho, I have a question," she says, placing her glass on the table. Her voice is even and businesslike. He looks up from his phone. "Yeah? Did something happen?" "Registered to my mother. Some papers arrived. I can't figure it out. I need legal advice." He frowns. "What papers?" "Let me see. I've already researched everything. I need a lawyer. The one who works with you. What's her name?" "Moran, I think. You mentioned it yesterday." She says the name easily. She looks him straight in the eyes. Inside, everything inside her is clenching, but on the outside, there's only a slight look of concern on her face. He freezes for a second, then he clears his throat. "Moran? Yes, that's her." "Great. Give me her number. I'll call and check. It's urgent," Amira says. She's already reaching for her phone, as if ready to write down the contact information. Jinho pushes his plate away, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. "That won't work now," he says, looking not at her but somewhere out the window. "She's on vacation. She flew away. For a week, if not more." "On vacation?" Amira asks again. She looks surprised. "But the work doesn't wait." "I know. But what can I do? The woman is resting. I'm not going to pull her out of her vacation over household matters." He pours himself more coffee. His hand is completely steady. "This isn't a mundane issue," Amira insists softly. "There could be fines. Maybe she has someone to cover for her? Or a work number she can call?" Jinho shakes his head. "She does everything through me. I'm her personal client. She's a small firm. There's no one to cover for her." He takes a sip of coffee, then looks at her, trying to sound convincing. "Wait a week. She'll come back, and I'll put you in touch right away. I promise." Amira nods slowly. She looks down at her plate, as if considering his words. "I see. Too bad. I'll have to figure this out myself, I guess," she says, but there's no disappointment in her voice. Just a statement of fact. She sees him relax a little. He thinks the crisis is over, that she's believed him, but the game has only just begun. He made the first move, a lie. Now it's her turn. She looks up at him and smiles her usual warm smile. "Okay, if that's the case. See you tonight then." she says, getting up to take her plate to the sink. He replies something, already immersed in his phone again. He's bought it. He thinks everything worked out. She puts the plate in the sink and turns to face him. Her face becomes serious and concerned again. You know, I'm still worried, Amira says, returning to the table. She leans her hands on the back of her chair. I reread those papers this morning. There's a deadline. I need to respond in 3 days. Waiting a week won't work. It could lead to big problems. Jinho stops scrolling through the news. He looks at her, irritation flickering in his eyes. He's not used to being questioned or pressured. What deadlines? It's her job. She pauses and adds, a little softer, but with the same insistence. It's important. For my family. You understand. He pushes his chair back and stands up. He walks to the window, holding a cup of coffee. His back is tense. It's unprofessional. He turns to face her, his expression determined, as if he's just made a difficult decision. You know what? I'm actually thinking of breaking up with her. As a lawyer, she's been making too many mistakes lately. I can't trust her. That's why I don't want to give her contact information. He takes a sip of coffee, watching her reaction. I'll find you another specialist. A good one. Today. And he'll sort out your paperwork. Amira listens without blinking. She almost admires how easily he comes up with new excuses. Break up. What a perfect word. The other specialist doesn't know your business, she counters calmly. He'll have to explain everything from scratch. And time is running out. Moran's already familiar with the structure, the documents. One consultation, and that's it. Just give me the number. I'll explain everything myself. I won't say it was from you if you don't want me to. Jinho shakes his head. No, I won't give her the number. I told you I'm stopping working with her. It's awkward. Amira sighs. She goes to the table and gathers her things. Her phone, her notebook. She pretends to give up. Okay, as you wish. Then just give me your phone number. He looks at her, not understanding. Why? You have her number in your address book. I'll find it myself and write it down. You won't even participate. You won't object if I just look at the contacts in your phone, will you? We're not strangers. She extends her hand. Her palm is open. Her gaze is direct, not challenging, simply businesslike. Jinho freezes. The cup in his hand pauses halfway to the table. His eyes dart over her face, searching for a catch. But she's completely calm. She's cornered him. All his excuses, vacation, quitting, crash against her simple logic. Give me your phone. I'll copy the number myself. He can't refuse. Refusing now would look outrageous. It would be a clear hint that he's hiding something. He slowly lowers the cup. His face turns stony. He reaches into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulls out his phone. Black, glossy. Okay, he says quietly. Dial it yourself. I don't want to be involved. He hands her the phone, but his fingers grip it tightly, as if he doesn't want to let go. Amira easily takes it. She feels his resistance, but pretends not to notice. Thank you, she says simply. I'll be quick. She unlocks the screen. He hasn't changed the password. She opens her contacts. The game enters the decisive phase. She holds his phone in her hands. Her finger is already moving toward the contacts icon. Jinho stands and watches, as if he sees his destiny on this screen. Everything slows down. He sees her every gesture with painful clarity. He understands. He's caught. Now she'll find the contact information. She'll see the name Moran and a heart there. And then she'll ask, or call. And it will all be over. Everything he's built over the years, his marriage, his respectable life, will collapse here, in the kitchen, at 7 in the morning. Thoughts thrash around in his head like birds in a cage. He can't snatch the phone from him by force. That would be an admission of guilt. He can't say no now. This is madness. She's trapped him perfectly. It seems there's only one way out. One slim chance. Wait, he says, his voice hoarse. Amira looks up at him, her gaze calm and questioning. I'll call myself, Jinho says. He reaches for the phone. You don't understand the legal intricacies, do you? I'll quickly explain the situation to her and then hand you the phone. He's trying to take the initiative, to try to control the call, to warn Moran with a glance or a word if possible. Amira looks at his outstretched hand. She slowly hands him the phone. Her face is expressionless. Okay, call. Just put it on speaker, she says evenly. She steps away and sits down in her chair at the desk. She folds her hands in her lap, ready to listen. On loud? Why? He blinks. That wasn't part of his plan. So I can ask a question right away if anything happens, so I don't have to retell it. It's logical. She says this in a simple, matter-of-fact tone, as if asking someone to turn on the news on TV. But there's a steely will in her words. Jinho freezes, phone in hand. His fingers are cold. He looks at the screen, then at her. He's back in the corner. Refuse? Say it's inconvenient? After all this dance of excuses, that would be the height of absurdity. He silently looks down at his phone. He finds a contact. His finger trembles over the name Miran. He takes a final deep breath and presses call. His finger trembled again, but he found the speaker icon and pressed it. The speakerphone icon appeared on the screen. Now everything they said would be heard throughout the room. Long beeps are heard. 1, 2. The sound seems impossibly loud in the quiet kitchen. Click. The connection is established. Hello? Miran's voice sounds cheerful. She's already awake. It doesn't have the sleepy hoarseness of last night, but it has the same familiar intonation. Jinho opens his mouth to say something quickly, something controlling, but he doesn't have time. Oh, my love, it's you! The voice on the other end of the line grows warm and joyful. You probably called me by accident yesterday, remember? Last night. I didn't call back. I thought my man was asleep. The words fall into the silence of the kitchen like stones. Darling. My man. At night. Jinho stares at his phone as if he's seeing a ghost. His face goes white. He doesn't understand. What last night call? It didn't ring. Amira sits motionless. She's looking not at the phone, but directly at him. At his face, which is now written with panicked incomprehension and horror. Everything she needed to know, she'd just heard, and she can see it now in his eyes. Jinho looks at his phone, then at Amira. His brain refuses to comprehend. What night? What call? It didn't ring. He remembers clearly. After the name-calling scandal, he simply collapsed into sleep. What? He blurts out. His voice sounds muffled, confused. What call? I didn't ring. There's a moment of silence on the line. Miran doesn't seem to understand either. Well, of course, she says, less confidently. Around 3 in the morning. Just a couple of rings, then they hung up. I thought it was you. You sometimes do that when you're bored. And then it dawns on him. 3 in the morning, a couple of rings. The call hung up. He sees a picture before his eyes. Amira in the living room, holding his phone. She dialed the number and hung up without saying a word. A cold wave washes over him. So she already knew. Back in the night. And this whole breakfast, all her questions, it was a trap, and he walked into it like a fool. He looks up at Amira. She sits motionless, her face a stone mask, and in her eyes he sees neither anger nor tears. He sees cold, indifferent knowledge. She has seen everything. She has heard everything, and she has been waiting for this moment. Panic, sharp and blind, grips his throat. He forgets the call is on speakerphone, that Miran can hear everything. His thoughts revolve around his wife, who now looks at him like a traitor. Miran, be quiet, he mumbles into the phone, his voice breaking. Later, my wife, she knows everything. She's here. He says this and immediately realizes he's made a new, irreparable mistake. He's said it out loud. He's voiced the fact. He's admitted it, without even trying to deny it. A sharp, frightened intake of breath came from the phone. Then silence. Miran understood too. The ensuing silence weighs on him. He has to say something. Fix something. Now. He begins to speak, addressing both Miran and Amira, his words stumbling and faltering. Listen, it's not like that, Ma. It was a mistake, a stupidity. His words flow in a stream, incoherent, empty. I didn't want you. For you. His gaze darts between the phone and his wife. Amira, you shouldn't think that. It just happened. It wasn't anything serious. I swear. Then back into the phone, almost pleadingly. Miran, I'm sorry I dragged you into this. It's my fault. Forget everything. We won't see each other again. He tries to cut it all off in one fell swoop. To deny. To refuse. To pretend it never happened. But every word he says only pins him tighter to what happened. He sees that his panic is not changing anything. Amira isn't moving. She's simply waiting for him to finish. That look knocks the last vestiges of self-control out of him. He exhales sharply. He decides to make one last desperate bet, to turn all his attention to Amira, to show her where his real choice lies. It's over, he says firmly, but there's a tremor in his voice. He looks only at his wife, ignoring the phone. I understand what I did. It wasn't serious. It was nonsense. I've come to my senses. I only want to be with you, Amira. Only with you. He takes a step toward the table, but doesn't dare come any closer. His hands hang helplessly at his sides. I'm going to fire her. I'm going to cut off all contact today. You're my wife. You're all I really have. He says this forcefully, trying to infuse as much sincerity into the words as possible, but the words ring hollow, like memorized lines from a bad play. He's offering her what was already rightfully hers, fidelity, the status of a wife, and he thinks that should be enough. There's complete silence on the line. Moran doesn't hang up, but she doesn't say a word either. She listens as she's erased from existence in one sentence, what they call frivolous nonsense. Amira finally stirs. She rises slowly from her chair. Her movements are smooth, full of cool dignity. She doesn't scream, doesn't cry. She looks at him as if she's seeing him for the first time, or the last. Amira rises from her chair. Her movements are slow, smooth. She makes no sudden gestures. She simply rises and stands opposite him, between the table and the window. She looks at him. Her face is completely calm. No tears, no anger, no pain. There's nothing on her face at all. It's like the smooth surface of a lake on a windless day. This is worse than any rage. He freezes under her gaze. His words catch in his throat. He'd just poured out his heart, promised, sworn, and she just stares, as if she were a stranger who, for some reason, was telling her sentimental nonsense. She didn't interrupt him. She listened to the end. And now her silence is a death sentence. It's louder than any screams. He tries to catch her gaze, to find something familiar in her eyes, a hurt he can assuage, an anger he can extinguish. But there's nothing there, only a cold, pure emptiness, a wall of ice he'd built with his own hands. He doesn't know what to say next. Sorry would sound ridiculous now. All his excuses have already hung in the air and melted away before they reached her. The silence in the kitchen is finally broken by her voice. It sounds quiet even, without intonation, like an announcer reading an announcement. You said you wanted to be with me, Amira begins. She's not asking a question, just stating it. Jinho nods silently. He nods again when he realizes she's waiting for an answer. Yes, not with anyone else, just with you. Okay, she says, one short word. Then it all starts again, from scratch. He blinks, confused. What is starting? That's it. Do you want to be with me? You're not my husband anymore. You're a nobody. You're the man who lied to me and betrayed me. And if you want to be my husband again, you have to win him over. Re-win him over. Not with words, not with promises, with actions. She says this clearly, enunciating every word. There's no malice or playfulness in her voice. There's only iron logic and cold determination. Jinho looks at her, his mind refusing to comprehend the meaning. Conquer? Amira, we're family. We share a home, a life. The life you ruined last night, she retorts, keeping her voice low. The house where you lied to me over breakfast. That's all in the past. Now there are new rules. My rules. Accept it, and you stay and prove every day that you want it. Don't accept it, and the door's over there. She nods toward the exit. She talks about divorce as calmly as she would about changing her grocery supplier. He stands, feeling the floor shift beneath his feet. Everything he's grown accustomed to, everything he considered his inalienable property, her love, her place in his life, this house like a safe haven, all of it suddenly feels fragile and shattered. And now she's asking him to do more than simply glue the pieces back together. She's asking him to rebuild everything anew, from different materials, on her terms. What should I do? He blurts out. A child's confusion is evident in his voice. Prove that you're ready to do anything for me, just like you did at the very beginning, she says. Only now it's more complicated, because then I believed you. Now I don't. One false move, one lie, even the smallest one, and the game is over. Forever. She pauses, letting the words sink in. You must show, not with words, but with actions, that I am the only one for you. That this other... She nods slightly toward the phone, from which Moran's quiet, ragged breathing still echoes, was a mistake. One you won't just acknowledge, but erase from your life without a trace. And from mine. He understands. This isn't just a request not to see Moran. It's something more. It's a test of endurance, patience, and sincerity, and he doesn't know where to begin. How? He repeats, and his voice sounds desperate. How do you imagine this? Tell me. I'll do whatever you want. Amira tilts her head. Something briefly flickers in her eyes. Not warmth, no. More like cold curiosity. I'm not a man, she says quietly. You've always known how to woo a woman, how to pursue her, how to make her believe she's the one. You know better than anyone how it's done when a woman is truly loved. She looks straight at him. If that's true, of course. Amira's words hang in the air. If that's true, of course. They sound like the final cold strike of a gong. Jinho stands in the middle of the kitchen, unable to move. His mind refuses to function. Everything he knew, how to lead people, how to solve problems, how to control every situation, is useless here. He doesn't understand the rules of this new game. In fact, he can't even see the playing field. Amira pauses, looking at his lost face. Then she slowly turns and walks toward the kitchen exit. Her steps are quiet, confident. She doesn't look back. He watches her go. His mouth is slightly open, but there's no sound. He wants to stop her, to shout something, but the words are stuck in his throat. What can he say now? All the words have already been used and turned to dust. The living room door closes behind her silently. He's left alone. The silence in the kitchen is now deafening, and the ragged breathing from the phone, which he still holds in his numb fingers. Jinho? Moran's weak, frightened voice breaks him out of his stupor. Wag? Nehtins. Jinho? Woi. What's going on? What was that? He slowly brings the phone to his ear. He turns off speakerphone. His own voice sounds alien and empty. It's over. Forget my number. Don't call. Ever. He doesn't listen to her answer, her questions, her tears. He simply hangs up. He does it mechanically. Then he puts the phone on the table. He looks at it as if it were evidence at a crime scene. He realizes he's just made the first move in this new game. On Amira's orders, he cut the connection. But it was just a technicality. It proves nothing. It's just obedience. And she needs something else. Something real. And he has no idea what it is. An hour passes. Jinho is still sitting in the kitchen. He didn't go to work. He can't bring himself to move. He hears sounds from other rooms. Amira's footsteps in the bedroom. The creak of the closet door. The sound of the shower. The usual morning sounds of their home. But now they sound different. They sound distant, as if coming from another apartment. He sits here, but he is no longer a part of this life. He is detached. An observer. Fragments flash through his mind. Her icy face. The words conquer. Moran's voice on the phone. He tries to formulate a plan. Where to start? Flowers? Gifts? But that was at the very beginning. And it was easy, because there was no wall then. Now, every action, every gesture of his will be viewed through the prism of betrayal. A gift could be seen as an attempt to pay her off. Attention, as hypocrisy. He stands up. He walks into the living room. Everything is in its place. Clean, quiet, beautiful. But the atmosphere is different. The air seems electric. He feels every thought as a potential mistake. Amira emerges from the bedroom. She's dressed in simple jeans and a sweater. Her hair is tied up. Her expression remains calm, bordering on indifference. She passes him by as if he were a chair or a vase, heading to the kitchen to make herself some tea. He stands there, unsure of what to do. Should he help, offer, talk to him? Any option seems false. I can do something? He finally blurts out. It sounds pathetic. Amira pours boiling water into a cup. She doesn't turn around. I don't know. You're trying to prove something. Decide for yourself. She takes the cup and goes into the office, closing the door behind her. The light but distinct click of the lock sounds louder than any slam. This is his new status. He remains behind the door, outside her space. He stands in the empty living room and realizes the scale of what's happening. His power, his authority, his money, everything that worked in the outside world is worthless here. There are different rules here now. Her rules. He must relearn how to walk, talk, breathe in this new, alien home that was once his fortress. He goes to the window and looks out at the city he once considered his own. Now he's here, in his own apartment, feeling like the most lost man in the world. The game has begun, and he takes his first hesitant step into complete darkness, unsure where he's heading. Jinho stands in the living room. The thought of going to the office seems absurd. His entire old world, meetings, negotiations, power, is now irrelevant. There's only one task, one he can't solve. He hears Amir turning pages in his office. The sound seems scorchingly loud. He doesn't know what she's doing. Reading? Working? Simply sitting behind the closed door, knowing he's there, confused? The first idea that comes to mind is primitive, childish. He remembers how, in the very beginning, she loved it when he made breakfast. The rare weekends when he could afford it. He goes into the kitchen, opens the refrigerator, looks at the ingredients. He only knows how to make an omelet and reheat noodles. He's not a chef, he's a boss. His skills lie in a different realm, but he takes out the eggs, cheese, and greens. He starts cooking. He does it slowly, awkwardly. He cracks the first egg, and the shell falls into the bowl. He fishes it out with his fingers, feeling gooey. Half an hour later, 2 slightly crooked but edible omelets, toast, and freshly brewed coffee are on the table. He knocks on the office door. "Come in," her voice says. He comes in. She's sitting at the table with a book. She looks at the tray in his hands, then at his face. Her gaze is expressionless. "I thought you might be hungry," he says, placing the tray on the edge of the table. She nods. "Thank you." He waits. Maybe she'll invite him to sit. Maybe she'll smile. She picks up a fork, breaks off a piece of omelet, tastes it, and then returns to her book. This isn't coldness. This is indifference. His action is zero. He leaves the room feeling even more lost. Crazy idea no. 1. Destroy the evidence. Miran's voice from the phone plays in his head. An old push-button one. Then he finds an electronics recycling center. He takes out his expensive, powerful smartphone, which contains his entire business life, contacts, and access. "I want to destroy it," he tells the salesman. The salesman looks at him like he's crazy. "We can erase the data." "No, physically. Destroy it, so it's impossible to recover." The salesman shrugs, takes a heavy hammer from under the counter, and hits the phone lying on the concrete floor several times with all his might. The casing cracks. The screen turns into a web. Jinho watches without blinking. Then he picks up the pieces, puts them in a bag, drives to the river, and throws them in. He returns home with a cheap phone. It only has one number, Amira's, and a few of her old text messages, which he manually transferred from the cloud. He arrives home. Amira is in the living room. He places the new, crappy phone on the table in front of her. "My old phone doesn't exist anymore. This is just you. That's all." She looks at the phone, then at him. For a second, her eyes flash not understanding, but something akin to surprise. She hadn't expected such a cruel, radical gesture. She picks up the phone and turns it on. She sees an empty contact list and her name. "That doesn't prove you won't see her again," she says finally, putting the phone back. "But it does prove I'm erasing everything connected to her. From now on, I'm starting over. With this," he points to the phone. She doesn't answer. But when he passes by later, he sees that the phone is not on the table, but on the shelf where her own things are. Not accepted, but not thrown away either. A small period. Crazy idea number 2. Public humiliation for silence. He knows she can hear their voices in her head. His voice saying beloved to another woman. He needs to block that sound, replace it. The next day, late in the evening, as she's sitting in the living room, he brings in his guitar. It's old and dusty. He doesn't know how to play it. He bought it in his youth and abandoned it after a month. He sits down on the floor, his back to the sofa where she is sitting. He doesn't look at her. He tunes the strings, out of tune, by ear. Then he starts playing. Simple, clumsy chords. And he starts singing. An old Korean ballad about loss and remorse. His voice is hoarse, untrained. He's out of tune. He does it terribly. It's excruciating to listen to. He doesn't sing to please. He sings to fill the space between them with this absurd, sincere noise, so that her memory of that conversation in the kitchen can be blocked, if only for a moment, by this idiotic sight, the powerful boss sitting on the floor, clumsily belting out a song. He finishes. Silence falls. He's afraid to turn around. "You were off-key in the second part of the verse," her voice says from the couch. There's no mockery in it. It's a statement of fact. "I know," he says to the floor, "and I switched the chord the wrong way. I know." He hears her get up and go into the bedroom, but she doesn't slam the door. And later, as he walks down the hallway, he hears her quietly humming that same tune, just once. Crazy idea number 3. Devalue your most important asset. He understands that his greatest asset in the eyes of the world, his status, money, power, is now poison to her. This is perhaps what allowed him to think he could have it all, that he could have it all. He calls his chief accountant and lawyer to his home. This is unprecedented. They arrive in the evening, tense. Amira is in her office, but the door is ajar. She hears everything. He sits down with them at the living room table and dictates new terms. He signs over half of his assets, real estate, shares in a secure business, to Amira, not jointly, personally, unconditionally. The lawyer tries to object, to talk about the risks. Jinho cuts him off. "Do as I say, and prepare a document stating that if I leave the family or cheat again, she gets everything else, without going to court." The accountant turns pale. This is financial suicide. It deprives him of leverage, of his trump cards, of his security. As they leave, he takes the folder with the draft documents and places it on the threshold of his office. This isn't a gift. This is proof that I have no power over you. You are now freer than I am. You can leave at any moment and leave me penniless, and I deserve it. This time she goes out, picks up the folder, flips through the pages, covered in numbers and legal jargon. Why? She asks simply. So you have a choice, a real one. Not out of debt, not out of habit, not out of fear of being penniless. Just a choice, to stay or to leave. And if you stay, it'll be only because you want to, not because you have nowhere else to go. She looks at the documents for a long time. Then she looks at him. This is stupid. I know. This is reckless. I know. She nods and takes the folder back to the office. She doesn't sign them, but she doesn't tear them up either. Crazy idea number 4. Become a shadow. He stops making decisions for her. Completely. If before he could say, let's buy this car, let's go to this country, now he only asks, and waits, even in the little things. What are we having for dinner? He asks. I don't know, she says. He silently goes into the kitchen, prepares 3 different simple dishes, and places them in front of her. Choose. He eats what's left. He finds out she wants to see a movie her friend mentioned. He doesn't buy tickets. He says, I read that this movie is playing at the downtown cinema. If you want to go, I'll go with you. Or I'll buy you a ticket if you want to go alone. Or I'll order some for home. He becomes passive. His will, always so rigid, dissolves. He exists only in response to her possible desires. He is like a servant who dares not guess what his mistress wants. It drives him crazy, but he holds on. One day, when he asks her opinion on a meaningless household detail for the 10th time, she turns around abruptly. Enough! Stop this! You've become a wimp! He falls silent. He looks at her. I don't know how else, he says honestly. I'm afraid to take an extra step, to say an extra word. She looks at him, and for the first time in days, something alive appears in her eyes. Not ice, but irritation, almost rage. I don't want a shadow. I hate this shadow. Be someone. Maybe bad, maybe fallible, but be human, not a ghost. He stands, stunned. It was a failure, but a failure that evoked emotion. It's better than the icy emptiness. It's a step, a painful one, but a step nonetheless. A week passes. He doesn't sleep properly. Irritation at his passivity. Emotions, maybe negative, but no longer empty. One night, he can't sleep. He goes into the kitchen for a drink of water. She's there too, standing by the window. They stand silently for a few minutes in the darkness, each at their own end of the room. Why are you still here? She suddenly asks without turning around. Why didn't you just leave? It would be easier. You have money, opportunities. Find someone else. Forget all this. He's silent for a long moment. Because I've already burned everything here, he finally says. My phone, my reputation with my subordinates who saw me destroy my phone or sing stupid songs, my financial security. I've burned it all to the ground. There's nowhere to go. All that's left is ashes. And you. And I have to try from these ashes, not just rebuild the old. Build something new, or die trying. She doesn't answer. A minute later, he hears her quiet footsteps retreating into the bedroom. But this time, the door doesn't click shut. It remains ajar. A narrow strip of light from the hallway falls on the bedroom carpet. This isn't victory. This isn't even trust. This is simply an abandoned door. For now, enough. A half-open door isn't an invitation. It's a trap for optimists. Jinho understands this, but he still comes in the morning, carrying a cup of tea. She's already awake, sitting on the bed, looking out the window. Good morning, he says, placing the cup on the nightstand. She nods. Silence. I was thinking maybe we should go somewhere, out of town, just get some fresh air, he suggests cautiously. I don't want to, she replies. He simply stands there. Okay. And he leaves, leaving the cup behind. He can't stand this uncertainty. His brain, accustomed to clear action result patterns, goes crazy. He tries to take a businesslike approach, analyzing the problem, searching for a solution. Problem? He betrayed her. Solution? He searches for an answer online, which is ridiculous. He reads forums, articles on how to regain trust. Everything seems fake and not about them. Insanity number 5. Become transparent. He decides that if she doesn't trust his words, then she must see everything. Absolutely everything. He begins to tell her about his day. Detailed, boring, like a report. At 10 in the morning, there was a meeting with suppliers from Busan. They asked for an extension. I refused. Then the lawyer called about the deal with the doc. There was a problem with the documents. He says this over dinner, which he always cooks now. Amira eats and listens, doesn't interrupt, doesn't ask questions. And then I fired Manager Choi. He hid the shortages for months. Then she looks up. Why? He stutters. He didn't expect the question. Because he lied. I can't stand being lied to. He says this and immediately understands the irony. A grimace appears on his face. Amira lowers her eyes back to her plate. But there was a question. A small one, but there was one. Madness number 6. Invading her world, with permission that wasn't there. He notices that she reads a lot. Novels, mostly in English. He finds a list of her latest orders online. It's easy, they share an account. He buys all these books again, but in paperback, and starts reading them. He's not a fan of novels. He reads reports, contracts. Reading about feelings and landscapes is difficult for him. He sits in the living room in the evening and reads, sometimes out loud. He just starts reading a paragraph without addressing anyone. One day, he reads a particularly pompous passage about a broken heart. His voice, used to giving orders, sounds absurd. He hears a quiet sound. He looks around. Amira is standing in the doorway, covering her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders are shaking slightly. Are you laughing? He asks, stunned. She shakes her head, but can't help but smile. It's not a kind smile. It's the smile of someone who sees something absurd. I'm sorry. It's just your tone. You read it as a threat to the competition, she says, and leaves. But laughter, albeit nervous, still echoes in the hallway. That laughter is worth more to him than any praise. Insanity number 7. Bring your head on a platter. He understands that he must somehow work off his guilt. But how? He decides to become an object of her irritation. Intentionally. Not passively, as before, but actively. He begins to do things that he knows irritate her. He neatly arranges her things in his own way. He irons her blouses, although she prefers a slight wrinkle. He cooks overly spicy food, although he knows that now she likes bland. At first, she tolerates it. Then she begins to snap. Don't touch my things! This is inedible. He accepts everything without justification. Okay, I won't do it again. And the next day, he does something else. Also irritating. One day, she can't take it anymore. Are you doing this on purpose, so that I will hate you? Yes, he answers honestly. Why? Because hate is a feeling. It's better than nothing. And because when you yell at me for this nonsense, at least you're not thinking at that moment about the fact that I called her beloved. She freezes, looks at him with a new, strange interest. You're completely crazy. Perhaps, he agrees. 2 weeks later, something happens that he hadn't planned. He gets a call. An emergency. There's a problem at the port. Serious. They need him, his presence, his authority. He can't solve this over the phone. He has to go. Now. At night, he stands in the hallway, putting on his jacket. Amira comes out of the bedroom. She sees him getting ready to leave. Something flashes in her eyes. Not jealousy, but worry. The old, familiar worry of a wife whose husband is driving at night to a dangerous place. Where? She asks curtly. The port. There. Our problems. They need me, he says, without going into details. He expects her to simply nod and leave, but she comes closer. She adjusts the collar of his shirt. A simple, mechanical gesture, the same one she always did before his dangerous trips. She does it automatically, and then her hand freezes, as if burned. She realized what she did. He catches her hand, gently but firmly. I'll be back. I promise. She doesn't pull her hand away, but she doesn't look him in the eye. This is ridiculous. Promising something like that. I know, but I promise anyway. He leaves. All night he solves problems, threatens, negotiates, sometimes balancing on the edge. Before, such excitement filled him. Now he thinks about only one thing. He promised to return. He turns on the light and sees neatly laid out on the shelf next to the wound. Hydrogen peroxide, sterile wipes, adhesive tape, bandage. Everything is new, bought recently. This was not here before. He stands and looks at this kit. Then he cleans the wound, puts on a bandage. He feels no pain. As he leaves, he sees her. She is sitting in the kitchen in the dark, drinking water. Thanks for the first aid kit, he says quietly. It's just common sense, she says, but does not deny that she did it. You weren't sleeping? It doesn't matter. He sits down opposite. It was an old story. Debts. Nothing serious. I don't care, she says, but it is not true. If it didn't matter, she'd be asleep. It's important to me that you weren't asleep, Heat says. She's silent. Then she gets up. Go to sleep. You look terrible. Amira. He says her name, and it sounds like a plea. She stops. What? I need to know. Is there a chance? Even one chance in 100? She looks at him for a long moment. I don't know. I can still hear her voice. I see your face at breakfast when you lied. It doesn't just go away. What goes away? He asks desperately. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe it just needs for more time to pass than you were together. It's a sentence, but a suspended sentence. He nods. Okay, I have time. All I have now is time. Insanity number 8. Start from the beginning. For real. He remembers how they met. Not through his world, through hers. She was a student intern at a gallery where he went on business. He needed to invest money in something beautiful. She was giving a tour. He was enchanted not by her, but by her knowledge and passion for art, which he did not have. He asks the next morning, Remember that gallery where we met? Does it still exist? She looks at him suspiciously. Yes, why? Let's go there. Why? I want to see you there. I want to remember how I felt then, before I ruined everything. She refuses, but a day later she agrees, maybe out of curiosity. They go. The gallery has changed, but she, having entered, changes herself. Her posture straightens, her gaze becomes alive. She begins to talk about the paintings, first to herself, then, forgetting herself, to him. He listens, not pretending. He really listens. He sees a different her, confident, intelligent, radiant. You're different here, he says. She breaks off, remembering who he is. That was a long time ago. No, it's here now. I just rarely see it, because I rarely ask the right questions. They walk silently down the hall. Then she says, without looking at him, I thought back then that you were just a rich snob. Who wants to buy a picture for status? I was like that, he admits. And then you asked me about the artist's technique. Not about the price, about the technique. And I thought, maybe I was wrong. I asked because I wanted to continue the conversation with you. I didn't care about the technique. She grins, dryly. At least, honestly. Moran appears on the threshold. Not by phone, in person. She has found their house. Jinho opens the door, and his breath catches. Amira is standing behind him in the hallway. Moran looks exhausted, angry. She is not crying. She is demanding. You can't just throw me away. I'm not an object. We had plans. Jinho tries to close the door, to tell her to go, but Amira puts her hand on his shoulder, stops him. She steps forward. Hello, Amira says coldly. Moran looks at her with hatred and contempt. You! Do you think you've won? He will come back. He can't live without passion. And you? You are just comfortable furniture in his house. Amira does not blink. Perhaps. But the furniture is asking you to leave now. This is private territory. I will not leave until he talks to me. Moran tries to penetrate inside, and then Jinho does something he hasn't done before. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't shout. He speaks very quietly, but so that every word is heard. Moran, if you don't leave in the next 30 seconds, I'll call the wrong people. I'll call your father, and I'll tell him everything. About our meetings, and about the money you took from me, saying it was for your studies. I think he'll be very interested. Moran's face turns white. Her father is a strict, old-fashioned man, the kind she's always been afraid to find out about. It's her weak spot. And Jinho, knowing everything about his mistresses, knew this too. You're a scoundrel, she whispers. Yes, he agrees. Go away. She leaves. Jinho closes the door. His hands are shaking. He turns to Amira, expecting an explosion, a condemnation. Amira looks at him. It was cruel. Yes. And effective. Yes. You knew her weak spot. You always know everything about the people you use. He can't deny it. Yes. She nods, turns, and goes into the kitchen. He remains in the hallway, crushed. He thinks he's ruined everything again. Half an hour later, she calls him. Come eat. He comes in. There's a simple dinner on the table. 2 plates. Why? He asks, unable to understand. After that, why haven't you kicked me out yet? She pours him water. Because today you defended our home. Maybe not in the best way, maybe in a mean way, but you chose a side, loud and clear. Before, you tried to sit on 2 chairs. Today, you showed which chair you sit on. Even if this chair is not the most beautiful. He sits down. He can't believe his ears. This is not forgiveness. It is a strategic admission of fact. I don't want to hear about her anymore. Ever, Amira says over the meal. You won't hear. I swear. Your vows are worthless. But, all right. They don't sleep in the same room. He moved into the guest room. But now they sometimes eat together. Sometimes they watch a movie in the living room. They sit on different sofas. They don't talk, but they don't avoid each other either. One day she gets sick, a simple cold but with a fever. He doesn't ask if she needs help. He just does. He puts water, medicine, a thermos of tea next to the bed. He changes the cool compresses on her forehead when she sleeps. Silently, she wakes up at night. He's sitting in a chair in the corner of her room, dozing. Not in her bed, not next to her, in the corner. What are you doing here? She wheezes. Making sure you don't choke if you drink water in your sleep, he mutters, without opening his eyes. Stupid, she says and turns over. But he doesn't send him away. In the morning, he's already making broth, a real one, with chicken, like his grandmother used to make. He's never done that before. He found the recipe online. She eats it in silence. Then she says, "It was too salty. I'll use less salt next time," he replies. "Okay," she says, and finishes the whole bowl. A month has passed since that morning in the kitchen. Amira comes into the living room. Jinho is sitting on the floor, trying to assemble a new shelf for her books according to the instructions. He's not getting it right. The pieces are scattered around. She looks at the mess. "What are you doing?" "A shelf. You said the books wouldn't fit." "I said that 6 months ago." "Well, here you go." "I'm doing it." She sits down on the sofa, crossing her legs, and watches him struggle with the bolts and nuts. He's angry, muttering curses under his breath. He's helpless at this simple task. "Give it to me," she finally says. He crawls away. She sits down on the floor, grabs the instructions and the tools. 20 minutes later, the shelf is ready. She does it easily, confidently. He sits and looks at her. "I didn't know you could do that." "You don't know a lot of things," she says, tightening the last bolt. Together, they hang the shelf. Then they arrange the books. Their hands sometimes touch. They both notice it, but pretend they don't. That evening, before they go their separate ways, she stops. "Tomorrow," she says, not looking at him, "I'm meeting some friends in the city. If you want, you can be our driver. Or not. As you wish." He understands. This isn't a date. This is a test, coming out into the world, into her world, as a driver. There's nowhere lower than that status. "I'll be the driver," he says immediately. "Okay, but you don't interfere. You sit in the car or in the cafe nearby." "Agreed." She nods and leaves. He is left alone. He doesn't feel a sense of victory. He feels like he's been given a pass to the next level of difficulty. And this level scares him even more than the silence at home. But this is movement. Forward. Maybe on his knees, but forward. The next day, he was just a driver. He put on simple dark clothes and polished his most inconspicuous car until it shone. He waited at the entrance for her to emerge with 2 friends. The friends climbed into the back seat. Their cheerful chatter came to an abrupt halt when they saw him behind the wheel. A tense, awkward silence fell over the car. Amira climbed into the front passenger seat. "Let's go," she said simply, as if that was the way it should be. He drove with perfect caution and silence. He heard his friends whispering in the back seat. Then one of them, the boldest, asked, "Amira, what does this mean?" Amira, looking ahead at the road, answered evenly, "It means I have a driver, and he has a chance to learn to arrive somewhere on time." There were no more questions. He drove them to the restaurant, parked, and waited in the car. He didn't go to the cafe nearby. He waited there, in the parking lot, for 3 hours. He read something on his phone, but didn't understand a word. He just waited. When the key returned, the friends said goodbye to Amira with a certain bewildered respect. They left. Amira got into the car. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes. Let's take you home." They drove back in silence. Then she said, "Take the next turn, to the sea." He obediently turned. They drove up to the beach, deserted at that hour. They got out of the car. They walked silently along the cold sand. The wind ruffled her hair. He took off his jacket and threw it over her shoulders without asking. She didn't shake it off. They stood and looked at the gray, restless water. She was the first to break the silence. "Do you know what the hardest part is?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not her voice, not your lies, but the fact that I stopped respecting myself because I believed it. I believed that fairy tale about the lawyer, even though deep down I knew it all. I let you deceive me. And for that, I was even angrier at myself than I was at you." He listened. clenching his fists in his pockets. There were no words to respond to this. And then, she continued, I watched you. You broke yourself. You did stupid things. You humiliated yourself. You became a shadow. And at some point, my self-respect began to slowly return, not because you were suffering, but because I saw that what you had destroyed was not just empty space for you. You were trying to put it back together, and I felt no shame. I stopped feeling like a fool who had been fooled. I felt like a person holding the fragments in her hands and deciding whether something was worth gluing back together. And that feeling is worth more than any words. He turned to face her, his face contorted with such hope it almost looked like pain. And, is it worth it? He whispered. She stared at the sea for a long moment, then turned her gaze back to him. I don't know what will come of this. I don't believe in miracles. Trust isn't a cup you can glue together. It's a new material that needs to be cultivated, and it will take years, and I may never forget, and I will always check in. He nodded, ready to accept any conditions. But, she paused, I'm willing to try growing this material. If you're willing to do it every day, no days off, no reminders, even when you think everything's fine. I'm ready, he said. And for the first time, those two words weren't a lie or manipulation. It was a simple statement of fact, like, the sky is gray. Then let's go home, Amira said. She took off his jacket and handed it to him. Put it on. You'll catch a cold. He put on his jacket, still warm from her shoulders. They went home, not to the same life, not to the same old fairy tale. They went to a new, fragile, complex world that they both had to build. At home, she didn't go to the bedroom. She stopped at the door of the guest room, where he was currently sleeping. Tomorrow, she said, finally clear out that junk in the pantry. I've been meaning to for a year. Okay, he replied. And order pizza. A real one, with seafood. I'm tired of your diet food. Okay, he said again, and the corners of his lips twitched. She nodded and went into her room. The door didn't close. Through the wall, he heard ordinary sounds, the sound of running water, the creaking of the bed. He lay down and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Years of work lay ahead, daily, unnoticeable proof. He didn't know if he could handle it. He only knew one thing. He now had tomorrow. And that tomorrow would include cleaning out the pantry, pizza, and its presence in the next room. And the day after tomorrow, there would be something else. And so on, day after day. This was his new life. Not ideal, not easy, but his own. And it had meaning.